Good day, good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned.
Maybe your stupid opinions aren't right. And are you so sure your life is going so much the way you want it to go, and you're such a bloody paragon of virtue, and the light is shining out every orifice, and everyone who disabuses you of your notions is evil?
Mic check. Here we go. Hey everyone, you are now listening to You're Probably Right podcast. Okay, you really are. And you know what? You're welcome in my house anytime. That's probably the funniest joke I ever told. Okay, here we go. So today is going to be a little bit different. Hold on a second. Let me take a sip. Okay, I'm just messing with you. Good old Canada Dry. It tastes so good. All right. So I wanted to do a different type of podcast today, but unfortunately, it's not really going to be that much different than what I do at times. And it's another one of those days where I do questions. I like to search the internet for questions, and I do them in a way I kind of like how I used to enjoy doing karaoke. And I guess I didn't really do karaoke in the traditional way, I suppose, because I could actually just sing on my own and present it to somebody else after I was happy with what I did, if that makes sense to you. I can delve way deeper into how in the way I sing a song, if I can sing it over and over and fix the parts that I want and have it sounding as close as I can possibly get at that particular time to the way I want it to sound, and then I like to present it to the world. Kind of like, that's the reason why I was using the app Smule, or Smule Sing, or whatever they call it, because I could do that. I could start songs and sing the pieces that they've put together for the part one, and then they leave a bunch of parts for the part two. You can harmonize knowing what the person is probably going to sing, or you can harmonize on the right keys. And just saying that's basically the way that I like to do these questions in the internet. So basically, or some people call it the interweb these days. But I like to find random questions, maybe read one or two. I'll jump sparsely around and make sure it's the type of questions that I actually want to answer, and then I go right into it. I don't read everything and then formulate a bunch of answers and make it fake. I like to do it on the run. So I'm just gonna straight up say I got these questions from simpson.ca.uky.edu, and they're called 50 life story questions to ask. Now, I can't guarantee that I can honestly answer all of these questions in the way that anybody would like me to answer them, but I'm going to do my best. As I said, I have not read these questions before, so you know me. If you've been listening to my other umpteen 50, 57 or 8 or whatever it is podcasts, you'll know that I stumble along when I read. That's just me, and that's part of my issues. Let's just call them issues. I hate talking about abilities and disabilities and all that stuff all the time. It sounds like a downer sometimes. And everybody seems to have a crutch, and everybody seems to need counseling, and everybody seems to have mental issues. And I mean, if you didn't have mental issues, you probably wouldn't have a brain. But anyway, that's just what I say. Okay, sorry. I'm drinking this Canada Dry ginger ale, and there's so much fizzy goodness that I have to expel the gas to the side of the microphone. Sounds like a commercial? No, I don't think so. Okay, so I'm going to read off a little blurb before they get into the questions. Okay, 50 life story questions to ask. Okay, so it says, the following questions have been adapted from the greatlifestories.com website. These 50 questions have been used with success in generating conversation and high quality information. You do not have to ask all of these questions. You may edit and add to this list according to your own interests and preferences. Often after one or two questions are no longer needed as the interview takes on a life of its own. Don't forget your pen and digital or video recorder. Okay. This is interesting. I guess you'd ask somebody who you'd find a tad bit interesting at least. So here we go. I'm slightly nervous because I have no idea what I'm about to ask myself. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? I know why I'm doing this. But the reason why it's cool for me to do these kinds of things where people might say, like, what are you, nuts? But I'm the kind of character or person who I ask a lot of questions. I delve deep into other people's issues, thought processes, troubles, and problems, whatever, triumphs, successes. And what ends up happening is I generally end up being the person listening to somebody else's things, and I have to deal with my things on my own. So sometimes it's cool to hear what a person like me thinks. And again, I'm the kind of person who will have no problem whatsoever going to watch movies on my own at a theater, which, to tell you the truth, when I really add it up, I've probably seen more movies at a theater by myself than I have with other people. And that's just who I am. I'm the guy that would, when I would go to a nightclub, which I won't now, I've learned the errors of my ways, my sinful ways, although it wasn't, and when I say that, it's not that I was out there doing, nonsense and nastiness or anything like that. But when I would go to a club, if I was a Friday night and I had no friends to hang out with, and I wanted to be around music and the life, I would just go to a club by myself. And of course, to a lesser extent, obviously, I would go to a mall by myself. If I had to go and do stuff or shop around, whatever it is, I would go by myself. I could concentrate on what I'm looking for and, do it that way. And the pinnacle for me, and I mean, I've talked about this before on other podcasts, was going to a restaurant by myself. Now, that was a little strange for me because all around you, you walk into the restaurant, or this is what happened with me, and I don't even know why I'm doing this before the questions, but I walk into the restaurant. Of course, I know that I can flip the bill. I mean, it's only one person. First of all, that's a good thing. I dress not to the nines, but I make sure I'm pretty straight going in, and I speak to the host or the hostess or whatever it is And I try to find not necessarily a quiet corner. I tried to be off center, if you understand, in a eating dining room or whatever it is, where, you know, maybe you're not at the center, so there's 10 tables in either direction, in any direction from you to the walls or the glass, whatever it is, the exits, whatever it is. But I tried to be maybe just over from that, if you understand. And I dine by myself, whatever I want on the menu. And, you know, that would be the most strange thing that I've done alone. But I mean, the way that I live, you know, it fits my personality, I would say. Not that I'm not a friendly person, not that I won't talk to people, but the follow-up in friendships, I don't always find that necessary. And I would say I'm quite an eccentric person to begin with, so I don't know that somebody would want to hear what I have to say every day, all day. You know what I mean? At least that's what I found out. That's what I found out anyway. Yeah. Okay, so this should be interesting. It starts off with family and friends. Oh, well, I don't really have any real friends, to tell you the truth. So this should be pretty easy, I guess, depending on how they ask this. But there may be some questions I could say I just don't have the answer or whatever. But I'm going to try to be as straight up as possible. I'll try to be a real one. You can't try to be a real one. You're just a real one. That's the joke of that. Anyway, 1. What were your parents' and grandparents' full names, date of birth, places of birth? I can't give you all of that. Not going to give you that. Every one of those questions that they ask you for the government always asks you your mom's maiden name. What can I give you from that question? This isn't starting off too good. I can tell you that both of my parents were born in Jamaica in a place called Hanover. One was born in a place they call Riverside, and the other one was born in a place called Craigie, and that's in Jamaica. 2. What were the occupations of your parents? I can tell you this one. My father worked for CN Rail or Via Rail in Canada. He worked in the maintenance side of things. I think as he was retiring, they put him like by Lost and Found or customer service or something. I'm not sure what it was, but I think they just gave him a little throwaway cushy job as he was retiring. But yeah, he worked in the maintenance crew, cleanup crew. From what it sounded like to me, he would clean the cars and, you know, do maintenance and replenishments and stuff like that. But I'm honestly not really sure, because my dad didn't really take his job home with him. He also was a salesman on the side, which he did for himself, and then he worked in the church. So he was certainly an upstanding citizen. My mother was in nursing, and you might have heard me say this before. She worked at one place for, I think it was 37 years straight. It's like my dad. They both only worked for one company the whole of my life. Now, I know that they worked other jobs before I was born, so I was told. But while I was alive, they only worked one job until retirement. Sorry, let me just check something. I've said it before. Okay, it's taping. It's happened before earlier on in my podcast exploits where I have recorded, or at least I thought I was recording, for a half an hour just to find out that I didn't record anything. And that was kind of upsetting. Okay, next question. How many children were in your family? Where were you in the lineup? Okay, I'll answer the last part first. I was the last child of 4. 2 boys, 2 girls. Boy first and 2 girls in the middle. 4. Generally speaking, what was your childhood like? My childhood, for the most part, on the home tip or where the street that I lived, was fun, mostly. My parents worked hard in and out of the church, and we spent a lot of time at church learning in a Pentecostal church, a Church of God they called it. Like they were Church of God this, Church of God that. But at school, I've talked about that before as well. I was bullied from the age of 9 all the way to the age of 12, I believe. Which, when you really think about it, it was grade 4, 5, and 6. Life wasn't wonderful at all. I dealt with some other stuff in the personal and I guess away from school life, but because of school and what happened at school, I wouldn't say that I had a happy childhood. A lot of my childhood, I would say, was probably taken from me for one reason or another. Let's see. That's better. I was listening to myself speak. It's kind of thrown me off a little bit through the microphone, so I'm going to cut that off. Okay. Generally speaking, okay, I did that. Next question. What 1 or 2 stories do you remember mostly or most clearly about your childhood? Well, I think I kind of just talked about that a little bit. I mostly remember being bullied, and it was by 2 cousins and a group of other kids that just didn't want to be bullied themselves, so they kind of joined in. And it really, really tortured and really, really shaped my life. Although it seems like it was probably only 4 years of my life, really. It was like grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. Well, really 3 years of my life. And those 3 years felt like 20 years probably. So that would be certainly a horrible story. Beyond that, one thing I do remember is when my brother ran away, and that was from abuse from a so-called family friend. We didn't know why he needed to leave, and we didn't know why he was acting out, but we sure found out eventually. And that was something that I didn't understand. There was always a piece of me missing when he left. That wasn't easy losing people in my life, I noticed when I really look back at it. And I'm in that situation right now where that type of situation is quite imminent in my life right now. And I realize I don't deal with loss very easy. I was the kid that, my parents would go to Jamaica here and there, and when they would leave, I would be there looking out of that big window at the front of our house, kneeling on the couch, pulling the curtains to the side and looking out as their car pulled off. Mostly it was my dad going on his own, and I really had to deal with the sense of loss every time. It was really strange when I look back at it, but understanding that I guess I'm just a very, I guess if you don't have a huge circle of friends, I guess you hold your family that much dearer and closer to you, I suppose. So yeah, I would say, yeah, my brother running away for, I don't know, 4 years, 3 years, I don't even know what it was. It felt like eternity. Like, it's funny how 6 months or a year or 2 years, 3 years of something will feel like it was way, way longer. But I can honestly say when my brother came back, I barely recognized him. Strange. Because he went from a teenager, maybe 15. No, it probably was longer than that. Yeah. He left from like 15 or so, and then he came back at like 21. Looked totally different. Are there any particular happy, funny, sad, or instructive lessons you learned while growing up? What were your family's favorite jokes and pranks? Well, let's see. Funny stories, I would say, would be the time that I swiped all the chocolates out of this dish. I guess my mother decided, I guess it was at a party, I think it was a Christmas party, whatever it is, at the house, and she decided to just put out the chocolates. Like, this was like unheard of in my family. It's like, it's gonna get waxed off. I mean, there was us four, and then there were my cousins that were another 5, plus my parents, plus my uncle and whoever else was around the house at that time. And it was like, there was apparently 9 chocolates left in a dish, on the table or whatever it is, like that. And apparently I ducked in and I took all 9 of them. So for the longest time, I had the nickname 9 Chocolates. Not to be outdone by the time that I had been snacking on the Christmas tree. And obviously not snacking on the Christmas tree. There were candy canes on the tree. And apparently there was one that was just a little bit out of my reach. So needless to say, the tree, which was real, fell on me. And somebody had to rescue me because the tree was on top of me. So that was an interesting time. Let's see. Beyond that, what else do I got? Sad stories. One story that I do remember, and I guess I didn't tell you about this story, which would have been something probably cooler, but not really cooler, was the first time I had like a serious asthma attack, and I was about 4 or 5, and I'll never forget it, probably, as long as I live, where I was walking down the hallway, and it was kind of a shut-off hallway. It goes back to the bedrooms at our old house on Pinford Crescent in North York. And I was walking and I felt a shortness of breath. And I very vividly remember collapsing in the hallway. But the weird thing about that situation was all of my siblings, or like the ones who said anything, my siblings, my older sister, and a cousin, said that they found me behind a couch under a table, which is really, 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 really strange. But yeah, that was a serious story where I woke up on the couch. They, I guess, resuscitated me, and then they brought me to the hospital. And they said I had bronchitis and some other stuff, whatever it was. But yeah, it was an interesting, traumatizing, I guess, to the family. And I remember hearing the ambulance come into the house. I don't know. I thought they were resuscitating me, but now that I think about it, or maybe that was me being driven. I remember there was ambulance sirens and stuff like that, and I was either in or on the couch. I can't really remember. It was a real foggy time. Guess I'm not that great of a storyteller. All right. Let's see. As far as jokes and pranks, there weren't really very many jokes. And again, it somehow the funny times around my family were mostly around Christmas time. And one thing I remember when my brother and my cousins were probably just, I guess, in the middle of puberty, whatever, around 14, 15, I remember them being dragged out of bed at Christmas Day because I guess my parents and whatever sisters wanted to start Christmas, and these kids would just sleep for so long at that time. They were growing boys that they had to be dragged out in their underwear out of their beds, which is kind of funny for everybody. It's a big joke. But we didn't really have that many jokes. You know, I mean, we had fun, but we didn't have jokes and pranks so much, at least not that I can remember. I mean, I would probably be the only prankster, and I would just get in trouble for the pranks that I would pull. 7. Who is or was the family comedian? Straight man. Let's see. I would say my older brother and my father were probably the best comedians. My father would, just the stories that he would tell us about being a young man working in the United States, and some of the stuff that he experienced would be not unlike what you would have heard from, say, Dr. Martin Luther King or those types, because he was from that era. My father was born in 1923, so he went through a lot of that stuff. And the stories that he would tell, sometimes they were very, very, very funny. Sometimes they were harsh. But the jokes, and to see his eyes light up when he would tell us about those old times, those old stories, were amazing. It's just to sit and hear him. As far as, and like when I think about my brother used to crack everybody up with just the weird behaviors. I wasn't sure if he was high sometimes, which I'm pretty sure he was at times, but we weren't really sure. But he used to do some crazy things as well. Sometimes when he was mad. Those were the days. What's the funniest family story you remember? The funniest family story I remember was the day my brother chased his coworker or his partner who he shared a taxi cab with around the car. Apparently they were sharing a cab, and his partner, a little small Indian guy, a brown guy, was supposed to bring him the car the night before so he could get a chance to maybe ride out on a Friday night or whatever it was. And for whatever reason, the guy didn't bring the car, and my brother was pissed off. And this time he's about 21, 22, and he's back at the house. And he literally chased this man around the car at least 10 to 15 times, going side to side and then chasing him around. And the funny part of the joke is that my brother, being 6'3" and very fit, jogger, and a weightlifter at that time, could have easily caught the guy. But for my brother, it was almost more fun to just barely not catch him the whole time while the guy freaked out. And it was funny because, again, I was by the big window with my sisters, and maybe my mother was there watching as he chased this guy around the car, and meanwhile calling him. And I think my mother and my father might have been calling him, telling him to stop doing it, but it was funny all the same. My brother was, I guess, a scary dude. If you could picture, say, Russell Westbrook with the mean mug that he has at times, but with dreadlocks. Yeah, it was interesting. funny. Let's see. Good. Family and friends. We popped through that and there was no friend questions. Good. Moving right along. Home. Let's see. What is it like where you grew up? Where I grew up, I always say, I was too rich to be poor and too poor to be rich, and too lower class to be middle class, but our parents raised us with a feeling of high class. And we were the only black family on my street for most of my life. All the other families were white, a few brown ones speckled here and there, but mostly Greek and Italian and straight up European, Canadian, English and Scottish. I think my next door neighbor was Scottish, Mrs. Nugent and them. I never forget them. But I grew up on a street that we played hockey, pretty much hockey or sometimes baseball, but mostly hockey. It was a good community. I remember we used to go to these people's houses. They were the Seaths, and we used to actually go to their house for Bible study, which was cool. It was a real neighborhood. I mean, as far as a real neighborhood that you think would exist maybe on a TV show, that's the neighborhood that I grew up in. What was strange, though, after a while, was all the deaths that were happening on that street. But that's for another story. Let's see. Describe your most important friendships. Well, as I said, because I'm a lone wolf mostly, my friendships were mostly the kids on my street that I could probably call friends. Some were a lot older, some were a lot younger, and we played sports together. We watched movies together, we hung out a lot, and we grew up together. And we only grew apart after I moved away, which when I look at it, I only moved probably as far as driving a car is concerned, I only moved about 20 minutes away, but it seemed like an eternity. And I lost most of my friendships. Well, yeah, I lost all those friendships, basically. I left them all behind. Funny thing is, somebody said, "You're not going to come back and visit us." And I was like, yeah, I'll be back. And I really wasn't back. And I did go back in the future. I mean, long time in the future. And people had passed away. People had moved away. And yeah, so that's what my childhood ended up being. Where and how did news of your neighborhood usually flow? Where and how did news of your neighborhood usually flow? I don't know, from house to house. We didn't have like a chatterbox on the street, but we did have one dude that you couldn't walk on his lawn, Mr. Buckingham. He was interesting. That was funny. I think I took a whole handful of grass out of his lawn one time. I can't remember why. It's just something stupid, I guess. It's like I scalped his lawn. My education, I didn't do so hot in school. I guess it was all kind of helped by the fact that I was bullied for those very important formative years of grade 9 to grade 12. From age 9 to age 12. What are the names of the schools and dates you attended grammar school, high school, college, trades, or technical school? I'm not going to tell you all of that stuff, but I did go to a school called Brookbanks in North York. I attended a few high schools. I went to junior high. I attended Milford. And I can be specific on some things, but some things, obviously I don't need you to know my ends of my life. But I went to a school called Milford in North York again. And then high schools, I went to Victoria Park Secondary School, Albert Campbell Collegiate, and I went to Milliken Mills High School in Markham. Same high school that Andre DeGrasse graduated from and became known as a sprinter. Colleges, I went to George Brown, which I like to call affectionately or unaffectionately Charlie Brown College, where they only care about your money. They might have changed now, or maybe most institutions are like that. But I also went to Seneca College. So first I had taken general arts and science and was hoping to go on to learn to be a gym teacher at York University. Something happened with a transcript, yada, yada, yada. That didn't happen. And then years later, after working as a salesperson, I went to a school called Seneca College and took social service worker program. What are your earliest school days memories? My earliest school days. Well, I was kind of a clown and kind of lost at school for whatever reason. I wasn't a very good reader, I can say that for sure. And one thing I do remember is watching episode of The Little Rascals and then trying some of the pranks on in real life. Like the day I tried to use paper glue, you know, that gooey, almost clear but brown glue, and I tried to put it on a girl's seat, hoping that when I put the glue there and she sat down that she'd get stuck to the chair. But the funny thing is I oozed out so much glue that a student complained to the teacher that I peed on her chair. So that was stupid. I guess I was a prankster. I also did a few of those pull chairs and tack on the chair and nonsense. I guess I was a bad prankster. But yeah, now that I look at it, never really got in trouble too much. Let's see. Are there any teachers or subjects you particularly liked or disliked? Well, I was horrible at math and my reading sucked, so I was already a double threat guy. But one teacher that I did not have a great affinity for would be my grade 4, 5, 6 teacher, who basically witnessed and turned a blind eye to the bullying that I was getting the whole time. Mr. Fisher. Thanks a lot, buddy. What did you learn in those first years of school that you would like to pass along to the next generation? Well, seeing that my next generation, except for one of my children, have already graduated high school, and the one thing I can say to the other generations that come after, and I mean, know who you are. For you who are being bullied, for you that are being ostracized in one way or another, in one shape or form or another, know who you are and know that no situation, as bad as it is going to last always. And if you can, try to find yourself around or within a circle of friends that care about you and are willing to fight for you, fight with you, or to stand up for you. And be always willing to stand up for other people. And remember how you feel when you're all alone. Were you involved in sports, music, drama, or extracurricular activities? Well, parents didn't have much money to put me into hockey, which is the one thing that I really wanted to play most of my life, and I only got to play like shinny hockey, which is you just show up with your skates and your stick and your gloves and hat and helmet if you have it and play hockey, or you play when they would make the rinks in the winter time, or you play street hockey. Music, I did play the guitar for a while when I was 12, and Eventually, I took myself out of it. I didn't want to go anymore. I wish my parents forced me to stay, but that is what it is. That's about it. I did play sports in high school, which was pretty good. I played football, basketball, soccer. And I had planned to be on the sports swim team and the sports counselor in my high school, but of course that's the year that I left that first high school. Work and volunteer. What did you want to be when you grew up? Well, I can honestly say that I'm not doing what I wanted to do, but I kind of am because, well, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a hockey player. And as I got older, I would say that my dream job would have been to be a radio host. I think I had the face for a radio host. What was your first job and how did you get it? My first job was at Chuck E. Cheese. And I was a busboy. And then I got promoted or demoted, however you want to look at it, because I just sucked at cleaning at that time. I ended up being Chucky, walking around taking pictures with families and people's moms and stuff like that, which I always held as a badge of honor for whatever reason. That was funny. I only did that job for a summer, but that time was a wild time. And I got that job partially because my cousin knew the manager. At least so I was told. What was your first boss like? My boss was cool. Mr. Miller. The funny thing about him is that one day I did the dumbest thing at the end of the night. We used to have these glass counters and they'd have all the stuff, I guess, underneath in the showcase. And I don't know what possessed me to jump across the counter and slide on my butt off to the other side. And then I grabbed a cup of Loganberry juice. I never forget it. So I jumped, slid over, boom, landed, grabbed the cup, poured myself some juice, drank it. And as I turned around, my boss was walking. And then he told me this story of this guy named Sebi who once did that. And apparently the glass broke and he cut his backside. That's the story. What did you learn from him or her? And that would be it. That's what I learned. Might not be the best thing is to be a heavy kid and jump and slide across a glass table, because you might break the table and you may cut your ass. All right, 21. Did you leave, quit, or get promoted? Well, I did quit. Or leave, however you want to look at it. I did get promoted. And no, I wasn't fired. Were you ever out of work for a long time? If so, how did you handle it? Yeah, there was a point where I was working for a clothing store, a big chain. And at some point I lost my job and I was out of work for possibly what felt like a year. I would say. Felt like I was out of work for a year, maybe even a year and a half. Here we go again. Oh, family and friends again. What do you recall about your first date? Absolutely nothing. The reason why is because back in those days, I was going to say them days, I used to just hang out. So I didn't really go on proper dates, to tell you the truth. So when I had one, I guess it wasn't that memorable anyways. I mean, when I really look at it, the first date possibly was a movie. And the funny thing is it wasn't really a date because there was like 5 people. I guess it was different times for me, being a kid growing up in a strictly religious Christian family. There wasn't a lot of actual real dating, although I did hang out with my girlfriends that I had back in the day. But I don't really remember, like, can we go out on a date kind of thing? We would just go out to a movie. How did you know you were really in love? The funny thing was, if I think about dating and stuff like that as a youngster, I think I mostly went off attraction, to be honest with you, because I generally cared about people. I was genuinely a nice guy. So all you had to do was basically like me back, and there had to be some type of attraction there. And we were as thick as thieves, That's how my relationships usually went and started. Tell me how you popped the question, or how it was popped to you. Okay, well, I can honestly tell you. I'll tell you one story. Really, I got two stories to tell you, so you can do your adding there. But the corniest time when I proposed is we were in Jamaica, and for whatever reason, she was on the phone talking to, I believe, her father. I can't remember who she was talking to, which gave me enough time to go grab a stick and write in the sand, "Will you marry me?" And for some reason, something there should have probably let me know that I was not on the romance of a lifetime, because it wasn't that well received. And to tell you the truth, I had already bought the wedding ring and the engagement ring at the same time, but I think I just wanted to make it official in Jamaica, whatever. And yeah, so that's how that went. Sounds pretty cool, but for some reason it was ruined somehow by one of us. Tell me about your wedding ceremony. What year? Where? I'm gonna leave those ones out. Next question. This took 26 questions for me not to want to answer. Well, the joke is, the reason why I don't really want to answer the wedding questions is because I had 2 weddings. So it's like I'd have to go over 2 weddings. I don't feel like going over it. So, 27. Tell me about starting your family. Well, I was married as a youngster, around 22, and we lived for 2 years before we had our first child. It wasn't a shotgun wedding. I always knew that I wanted to be married, but I believed I didn't have the right sense of family value stuck deep within me, even though my parents were married the whole time I was young. So therefore, we had a child when I was 24, our first child. Probably hear some praying in the background. Tell me, were you married more than once? Yes, I answered that already, twice. That's why it's kind of, you're asking that question backwards. But anyways, whatever. Move right along. Recreation and leisure. What are the most memorable family vacations or trips you can recall? I would say the most memorable one is when it was only a few years back, and we went with me and my wife went, and we took all of our kids with a blended family. That was 5 kids. It's kind of cool. We were all able to get there. We went to Jamaica and we had a fun time, pretty much. What leisure time activities are you involved in? At this present time, not much. I mean, I work, I do my podcast, and that's about it. I used to be a big time gym rat before COVID. And a few years before, a year or so before COVID, and I just actually got back in the gym when COVID hit, and that kind of put everything on the kibosh there. So it is what it is. What are your greatest accomplishments in this field? in this field? Well, I can't really say what my greatest accomplishments are because I'm pretty regular, I would say. There's nothing amazing that I've done. But I mean, I guess being a half decent father would probably be my biggest thing. Anyhow, because of all the praying going on in the background, I think I'm going to cut off for now. Jeez, man. Okay. Let's see if I can continue. I'm going to get all the way to let's see. What are your greatest accomplishments in this field? I guess, just thinking about my podcast. I mean, my greatest accomplishment right now is being able to do 57, 58 episodes, which has basically all been me talking about different things. And it's been nice to know that I've been able to do that. Also, I run a few podcasts. A few YouTube channels. Learned to cut hair pretty well. The African hair. And yeah, that's about it. And I used to sing a lot, of course, as I said. Quite a few recordings, and some songs are better than others. But I was just singing other people's songs. It's not like I was a songwriter or anything like that. Spirituality. Do you follow any religious traditions? Well, I am a Christian. And I fully believe that every word of the Bible, the Holy Bible, is true. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and I believe that Jesus is God. I believe that he was crucified. He gave up his life as a ransom for mine, and that he's coming back again for his own. And I believe in predestination, sanctification, and glorification. I believe that Jesus lived a sinless life. He was the only sinless person in the Bible. Some of the heroes that people talk about were flawed. Well, they were all flawed. So the funny thing is, people only talk about King David or David slaying Goliath, or Jacob having his name changed to Israel and being the father of the tribes of Israel, or Abraham and being father Abraham. But people don't really necessarily talk about their shortcomings. Sometimes when I was a kid, I used to think there's three different people where they talk about the lives that these men have lived. But as I said, Jesus lived flawlessly, and he gave himself a ransom for people like me and you. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall live and not die. Yeah. Do you follow any religion? So I answered that already. And I talked about that. Well, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. That's the real exact scripture. It's funny how these scriptures get meddled in our heads, especially when somebody's making a lot of noise in the background. I'm having a hard time concentrating. Hopefully you can't hear too much of it. Have you ever changed faiths? Nope, I've never changed faiths. But how I believe in God is different from how I was raised to believe in God. Whereas I don't necessarily believe in all that hooping and hollering and jumping around in the spirit and slaying in the spirit and all that stuff and speaking in tongues and stuff. I just believe the Word of God is sufficient. The sufficiency of Scripture. The realization that I've been chosen as a child of God, and I'm declared righteous through the blood of Jesus and His sacrifice that He sacrificed for me. But I don't believe that I am good or I am righteous. I am only anything good because of what Christ is in me. But within me, there is nothing good. So that's where I'm. What role does my beliefs play? Well, it's the main role. So in my life, in other words, how another guy might say, okay, I'm a black guy and I'm from Jamaica or Trinidad or wherever, and I'm a male and all that other stuff, before I look at any of that gender stuff or any of that culture stuff or any of that color stuff, I see myself as a Christian. I see myself as a disciple. What would you tell your children about your faith? Well, pretty much what I've told you, but I have already told my children about my faith. Okay, let's see. So technically I'm on question 37. Were you a volunteer, drafted, or conscientious objector? No, I was never none of those things. Interesting. If you didn't serve, what do you recall about being on the home front during a war? Nothing. How old am I? What key moment do you recall about your service? Nothing. What would you tell today's young soldiers? Nothing. Moving right along. Triumph and tragedy. What are the most joyful, fulfilling times of your life? Quiet, first, alone times with my previous spouse. The time we spent getting to know each other, talking through the night from, say, 10 till, say, 7, 8 in the morning. We did that a few times when we were getting to know each other. Spending time laughing, singing, hanging out with my children, watching movies, just talking to my mother, father, and sister, just hanging out with family, just having something to say and talking, me trying to crack them up. That's were probably the most fun. Any sad, tragic, or difficult times? Well, I've spoke about those already. I would say the first horrible time was the day that my father passed away. And when he passed away, it was different because he died at home and everyone was home except for my brother at that time. And he died at 3:15 in the afternoon. And the coroner, the ambulance, for whatever reason, it was cold, it was the middle of winter, didn't come and pick him up from the house until 7:30 that night. So the weird thing was I just kept, I was downstairs in the first place when my mom called me, said he was going, and I came and looked and he was gone. And they didn't pick him up until 7:30. I remember my sister screaming as the ambulance finally took him out of the house. Our furnace broke down that night, which was probably really amazing because being bedridden, my father couldn't have probably lived lying upstairs in that bed with the heat not working for, I think, 2 or 3 days. The rest of us had to huddle together and sleep in the family room. by the fireplace. And that was the first tragedy as far as people that I really knew and really were close to me. And considering that my father was my best friend and my hero, it was really messed up. What lifelong lesson did you learn from those tough times? Well, I find myself clamoring to scratch through the Rolodex of my mind, trying to remember the advice that my father used to give, and seeing how important he was in my life and how important he would be at this point in my life, but unfortunately he's gone. Were there any moments you recall as true breakthrough in any area of your life? Not really, but I can honestly say this year, 2022 has been eye-opening for me. I've experienced a lot of loss this year, a lot of tragedy afoot in my life, and I keep saying to myself, I didn't know it would be this way. And that's the truth. I didn't know it would be this way. And that's what it is. If you could do one thing differently in your life, what would that be? I would most definitely have fought harder to sin less. A lot of my sin and shortcomings, I can say honestly, I'm embarrassed about. And I realize when I look at especially my sisters, I can say that they did a lot more with a lot less. In a godly manner. That's for sure. What have you learned over your lifetime that you would like to share with the younger generation? I believe if you find that you believe in God, understand that that is a great thing. And understanding the God of the Bible and delving into the scriptures and listening to teachings about the Bible and mimicking what you've heard, what you've seen in a godly manner can be so much more valuable than just going along in life. Ask questions for the younger generation. And for the older generation, I would encourage you to give answers. A lot of the questions I might have had, I did have, weren't answered, which prevented me from asking more questions, which would have probably helped me out as I look at it now. So always ask questions. And when you are asked questions as an older person, or as somebody seen as to have some type of insight or wisdom, always tell the truth and always answer the questions to the best of your ability. What are you most grateful for in your life? That I am a Christian, and that God had enough mercy on me to give me the faith to believe in His word. (49) How have you taught your children to be grateful? I would say my oldest two especially, but the youngest one I've had a lot more just regular conversations as young as he is, but I always let my kids know that the best time to give a learning lesson for me has been when things are amazing, and being able to throw a slight cloud on that amazing day and say, remember, son or daughter, things aren't always going to be this good. So cherish these moments and prepare, because life has its ups and downs. Lastly, are there items or places that mark special gratitude for the ones you love? What are they? What are their stories? I think it's just the faith in God that my parents have shown me and have had. And although my mother and my father, flawed as they are, not perfect, not overly ambitious in this world of finance and items, possessions, but they were both sincere believers in God. And although their faith seemed to falter here and there, and we would see it and hear it in the things that they would say, they continued serving in the church. But only they could possibly say what everything really meant, because they were the ones doing the serving. So sometimes you look back at the older generation, you wonder, were they serving God, or were they serving the pastor and the men or the people of the church? But I'm grateful that they found something higher than themselves, that they found a God that they could believe in, that they found a God that knew what it was to be a human being living on this earth. The only wise and knowing God, the only living God, the one who created the heaven and the earth, God of the Bible, the one who sacrificed for our sins, Jesus, died there for us and rose again. Anyhow, that's it. We've gone through the 50 questions. They weren't that great questions, but anyhow, hopefully this will be useful to somebody at some point. Anyhow, this is MCM signing off, and this is You're Probably Right podcast. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 docs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, Sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, well, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.